Hi everyone, it's Natalie from Let's Practice English. For this new series of videos, we are going to be doing 100 of the most difficult words to pronounce in English. But before I get started, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and don't forget to like the video. So the first two words we have are close and close. Now these are extremely similar in pronunciation, so it can be very difficult to tell the difference between them both. But clothes are obviously what you wear, and close is used when you need to physically close something. For an example sentence, we could say, I always go shopping for new clothes every month. And can you do me a favour and close the door? On to the second one, we have comfortable and comfy. Now, comfy is just a shortened way to say comfortable, so you can use both of these. And comfortable just means when something feels nice, basically. So you could say, oh, this t-shirt is really comfortable. Or, I always wear slippers in winter because they're so comfy. On to the third one, we have word, world, work, and walk. Now these words are pretty similar when it comes to pronunciation, so it can be difficult, it can be easy to confuse these words. So the first one we have is word, which I'm sure you guys know what a word is, like the, apple, cat, or something like that. And then world, as you can tell, we have a much longer vowel sound in that word, is obviously the whole world, the earth and all the planets inside. Work is just the job that we do. And the last one, walk, I'm sure you all know what walking is. Again, you can tell we have different vowel sounds in each of these words, so try not to get them confused. So an example for the first one could be, my favourite word is acceptable. And for the next one we could say, the world is so huge, scientists haven't been able to discover all the planets. And for the next one we could say, I used to work as a baker during university. And the last one, I always walk to school every day because it's the healthier option. Okay, on to number 4, we have woman and women. Now, one of them is the singular, the first one is the singular word, the second one is the plural word. So as you can tell, we've just switched one of the letters from A to E to make it plural. So if you just listen again, it's woman and women. So just a little bit of a difference with the vowel at the end. And an example sentence could be, many women fought for equal rights in the past in England. Okay, on to number 5, we have question and answer. So I'm sure you guys know what a question is. It could be something like, how old are you? And the answer could be, I am 20 years old. On to number 6, we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, I'm sure you guys know that these are the 3 types of meals that we eat during the day. So for breakfast, you could maybe eat something like cereal or toast or eggs. For lunch, maybe something a bit bigger like a sandwich, pasta, something like that. And then for dinner, you know, it could be rice with meat, with vegetables, or something like that. On to number 7, we have free and 3. So these words are probably easily confused by foreign learners because they are almost pronounced exactly the same. However, you can tell at the beginning there is a slight difference between the pronunciation of the vowel. So with the first one we said free, the second one we say three. So you can tell that my tongue rolls a little bit for the number 3. And an example sentence could be, are you free next weekend? And for the number we could say, my nephew has just turned 3 years old. Okay, on to number 8, we have tooth and teeth. So tooth is the singular, just for one tooth, and then teeth is the plural for all of your teeth. So with this word you can tell that there's a difference between the vowels that we use. So the first one we say tooth, the second one teeth. So it just goes from an O to an E vowel, and it's quite simple like that. So an example could be, my niece recently lost her first tooth. And for teeth, we could say, you regularly need to clean your teeth. On to number 9, we have mirror and error. These are quite similar when it comes to the vowel sounds in these words. So if you listen again, the first one is mirror, second one, error. So just a small difference here. And an example sentence could be, I always look in the mirror before I go to work. And for the second one, we could say, it's okay to make errors in your work, otherwise you'll never learn. On to number 10, we have though, thought, and through. Now, these are the types of words that really confuse students because they are so similar in spelling, but when you just add one different letter, it changes the pronunciation completely. So let's listen again. The first one is though, the second one, thought, and the third one, through. So you can tell with the first one, it's not the same vowel sound at the beginning, it's though. Whereas the second two, we have thought, you can see my tongue moving a little bit, and through. So that's what the difference is at the beginning of the words. And an example sentence could be, even though I really liked the dress, I returned it because it was too expensive. And for the second one, she thought it was a good idea to go to school in London, however, it was too expensive. And for the last one, you have to go through the archway to get to the school. On to number 11, we have fruit and suit. So obviously these words are pronounced very similarly, but we do have a different consonant at the beginning. So with fruit, obviously we have an F. With suit, we've changed it to an S. And an example could be, my favourite fruit is strawberries. And on to the second one, we could say, men always wear a suit when they have a formal occasion to go to. On to number 12, we have photograph, photographer, photography, and photographic. So these are obviously talking about very, very similar things, but they all have different meanings, and sometimes we change the vowel sound or the consonant sound at the beginning of these words. So let's talk about the first one. So the first one is photograph. So photograph just means the picture that you take with the camera, whereas photographer, as you can tell there's a different pronunciation because we have the at the end, is the person that takes the pictures. And the third one, photography, again, difference with the ending, is the art of taking pictures. And the last one, photographic, So you can tell with this one we say it more like photo, and then at the end obviously it changes. This can be used to talk about anything that is relating to photographs. So let me give you some examples. I used to study photography at school, or my best friend is a photographer. On to number 13, we have analyze, analysis, and analytical. So again, it's quite similar to what we've just done. We kind of change the end of these words and then it changes the meaning of them. Okay, so let's do this one again. So we have analyze, analysis, and analytical. So you can tell that it just changes at the ends of these words. So let me give you some examples. You really need to analyse your work thoroughly before you submit it to your lecturer. Or for analysis, you could say, the students needed to put their test up for analysis before it went through to the doctor. And for analytical, we could say, the complete analytical treatment was given by the nurse. On to number 14, we have climb and tomb. Now these are pretty difficult because students always try to pronounce the B at the end of the words, but you do not need to pronounce that B at all. So it just becomes climb and tomb. So you just don't hear that B sound at all at the end. So an example sentence could be, the man tried to climb Mount Everest. Or for tomb, we could say, there are many ancient Egyptian tombs that were found in the past. On to number 15, we have desks and asks. So as you could probably hear, the sound that was made with the S and the K is quite an interesting sound to listen to. So let me do it one more time. Desks, asks. There's a bit of a difficult sound in the middle of those words. So an example could be, all the desks in the school are made from wood. And for asks, she always asks a question when she doesn't understand. On to number 16, we have 13 and 30. So I guess you guys know 13 is obviously 1, 3, 30 is 3, 0. So this is a higher number than the one before. So there is a little bit of a difference with the way that we pronounce these. So let's listen again. So it's 13 and 30. So the difference is at the end of the word. And an example could be, my older brother just turned 30. On to number 17, we have sixth. Sixth. So this word is quite difficult to pronounce because we have the X and the TH following after. So I guess you know what the sixth is. It's just the 6 and we normally put a little TH at the top of the word. So an example could be, she came 6th in the competition. On to number 18, we have Wednesday. Now, Wednesday is quite easily mispronounced because there are some letters in there that we just don't pronounce at all. So for example, at the beginning, when you see that D sound, it is not pronounced. We just say Wednesday. So we just miss the D sound completely. And an example could be, every Wednesday I go to piano classes. On to number 19, we have months. Months. So, as you can tell at the beginning of this word, that O sound is more pronounced like a U sound instead. So just remember when you say it's not months, it's months. An example sentence could be, there are 12 months in the year. Okay, now on to the last ones. We have access, accent, success, and succinct. Now these are all pretty similar again with the pronunciation, but there are some slight differences. So with the first one, if you listen again, it's access. So with that C sound, it becomes more like a K and an S at the beginning instead. And with accent, obviously the ending is changed because we have the N and the T. And also with success, again, very, very similar to access, but it's just replaced with an S at the beginning. And the last one, succinct, this is quite difficult because we have the ng sound at the end, so it's succinct instead. And some examples could be, I really love the accent from Brooklyn, New York. And the man's success is down to his wife. Today we are going to be moving on to part 2 of the 100 words that are most difficult to pronounce in English. But before I get started, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and don't forget to like the video. So, on to the first one, we are going to be looking at restaurant. Now, restaurant is the type of word that is used in a lot of different languages, and obviously each language has different pronunciation, but in British English, we will pronounce this word like restaurant. So as you can tell, we don't pronounce the A and the U after the initial T, it's just restaurant. And an example sentence could be, I love eating in Italian restaurants. On to the next one, we have vegetable. So with vegetable, it's easily confused because we have the word table at the end, which a lot of students might try to pronounce exactly the same as table. However, it's not pronounced the same, it's veg-table instead. And an example could be, cucumbers are my favourite vegetable. On to the next one, we have water. Now, water is pronounced differently in British English and American English. So this is where you have to really listen to that T sound, because we do pronounce the T sound in British English. So if you just listen again, it's water instead of water, like the American pronunciation. And an example sentence could be, everyone needs to drink lots of water every day. On to the next one, we have chocolate. Now, chocolate, again, like the first word, is used a lot in different languages, so it does have different pronunciation. But in British English, we pronounce it like chocolate. So we only really have 2 syllables in this word. And we miss the second O after the C. That just is not pronounced. So let me give you an example. I love eating chocolate every week. On to the next one, we have hamburger. So this word, again, like the others that we've spoken about, is used in a lot of different languages. So in British English, we do pronounce ham, just like the meat ham as well, and then we say burger. So at the end we have the sound. And an example sentence could be, I rarely eat hamburgers because they're so unhealthy. On to the next one, we have pizza. So pizza obviously is a word that has originated from Italian, but we have changed the pronunciation a little bit in British English. At the beginning of the word it's written as P-I, but in our pronunciation it's more like a P-E, it's like P-Z instead. So again, at the end we don't really pronounce the A, it's more like an sound. And an example sentence could be, the Italians invented pizza. On to the next one, we have cucumber. I'm sure you guys know what this is. It's a type of vegetable. The pronunciation of this word is quite difficult because we have a lot of C's and U's in the word. But if you just listen again, we pronounce it like cucumber. So as you can tell at the beginning, it's a different sound to the middle C sound. So it's cum, burr. So we have two different sounds actually instead. And an example sentence could be, cucumber is really healthy because it has lots of water inside. On to the next one, we have schedule. Now, schedule can be pronounced in two different ways. You could say schedule or schedule. Now, both of these are totally fine. Yeah, so both of these are totally fine to use. You can choose which one you want to use. Now, let me just give you a quick tip as to how to pronounce the end of this word. So as you can see, it's spelt D-U-L-E, but it's pronounced like jewel. So similarly to a jewel, like a diamond jewel at the end. And an example could be, my schedule every week is very busy with university work. On to the next one, we have refrigerator or fridge. Now, fridge is just the shortened word for refrigerator, and it is probably a lot more common to say fridge than refrigerator. So, I'm sure you guys know what these are. These are used in the kitchen to keep things cool. And an example sentence could be, you must always keep your eggs in the fridge so that they don't go off. On to the next one, we have squirrel. Now, squirrel is quite difficult to pronounce because we have a Q at the beginning, and normally Qs end up turning into K sounds. So if you listen again, it's pronounced like squirrel. So at the beginning it's squir, and at the end it's roll. So it's quite a long R sound, if you can hear that, guys. So let me give you an example sentence. You could say, squirrels love eating nuts. On to the next one, we have unfortunately. So unfortunately is quite a long word, so it could be easily mispronounced. So let me just break it up for you. So it's un-for-chu-nat-ly. So it's not too difficult to pronounce once you break it all up into smaller sections. And an example could be, she unfortunately forgot her homework at home, therefore she couldn't hand it in to the teacher. On to the next one, we have rural. So rural is any type of area that's in the countryside and outside of the city, where you will see lots of green, lots of farms and lots of trees and plants and things like that. So this word is quite difficult to pronounce because a lot of students don't know how to pronounce the initial U sound. So if you listen again, it's pronounced like rural. So both of these vowels are quite similarly pronounced, but there is a little bit of a difference between them. And an example could be, it's better for children to live in rural areas rather than the city. On to the next one, we have thing and think. So these are almost pronounced exactly the same, but of course we have a different consonant at the end of the word. So I'm sure you know what thing means, just means, anything. And to think is obviously to think of something. So these are almost pronounced the same, but with just the different consonant sound at the end. So let's listen again. So the first one is thing, the second one is think. And let me give you some example sentences. The first one you could say, I haven't got anything to do. And for the second one, you could say, she needs to think hard about what to do for her next science project. On to the next one, we have probably. So probably is the type of word that could be easily mispronounced because a lot of students try to pronounce that A sound, but it's not an A at the end, it's probably. So it's more like an sound rather than an A sound. An example sentence could be, you should probably wake up early before your exam. On to the next one, we have dangerous. So at the end of dangerous, it's quite difficult to pronounce because we have two vowel sounds. We have the O and the U. However, this is just pronounced like rus. So if you listen again, it's dangerous, dangerous. And an example sentence could be, working on an oil rig could be really dangerous. On to the next one, we have individual. So individual, I'm sure you guys know what that means. It just means to be a unique person, an individual. And the way to pronounce this correctly is individual. So it's the end that's probably difficult to pronounce for most students. So remember that it's jewel. And an example sentence could be, everyone is an individual. On to the next two, we have beach and sheet. So these maybe have a little bit of a similar pronunciation, but of course they have differences. So the first one is pronounced like beach. So when you see that E and the A, just remember it's pronounced like an E. Both of them are pronounced like E's. So you just say beach. And for the second one, we say sheet. So it's the same vowel sound, it's just the long I vowel in the middle. And an example could be, the beaches in Turkey are always clean. And you must change your sheets at least once a week. On to the next one, we have etc. or etc. So this can just be used when you don't want to list anything else. So you could say, oh, I really want apples, pears, bananas, etc. from the local market. So this word again has been taken from another language, but it is pronounced probably differently in British English. So if you just listen again, the first word is et, the second one is cetera. So that's how you pronounce it. On to the next one, we have almond and salmon. Now, even though both of these words have L's in them, the L is only pronounced in almond. So if you can hear, I pronounce the L sound in the middle, whereas in salmon, we don't pronounce the L at all. We just say salmon instead. And an example could be, Turkey grows the most almonds in the world. And eating fresh salmon is much better than eating farmed salmon. Okay guys, on to the last one, we have jewellery. Jewellery. Now this word is spelt differently in British English and American English. So one of them will use two L's, one of them will only use one L, but it doesn't really matter and it doesn't change the pronunciation of the word. So if you guys listen again, we pronounce it like jewelry. So as you can tell, the beginning, it's not really pronounced like an E, it's jewel. So it's more like an A sound actually at the beginning. And the other E sound really isn't pronounced, so it's just jewelry. And an example sentence could be, my best friend loves buying jewellery, she buys bracelets all the time. Today we are moving on to part 3 of the 100 most difficult words to pronounce in English. But before I get started, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and don't forget to like the video. On to the first word, we have procrastination. Now, procrastination is quite a long word, so it could be easily mispronounced. So let's listen again to how it's pronounced. So we say procrastination. And if you hear at the end, when we have the T-I-O-N, it's actually pronounced like a shun sound rather than a tion or something like that. And if you don't know what procrastination is, it just means that you are being very lazy and you're not doing your work very well. So let me give you an example sentence. You could say, my sister is famous in procrastination. On to the next one, we have library. As you guys know, the way library is spelt, it has two R's in it. However, when we say the word, we only pronounce one of those R's. So if you listen again, it's library. So we really only pronounce one of those R's properly, and it's the second R that we pronounce. So let me give you an example sentence. I always go to the library to study. On to the next one, we have enthusiastic. Now, enthusiastic, like the first one, is quite a long word, so it could be easily mispronounced. So if you listen again, it's en-thu-zi-a-stick. So if we look at the first S sound, it's pronounced more like a Z sound, whereas the last S is pronounced like a S sound. So we have two different sounding S's in the word. And an example sentence could be, my nephew is always enthusiastic about going to the parks. On to the next one, we have architecture. Architecture is the art of drawing and designing buildings. And if you listen to the pronunciation again, we say ar-ki-tec-ture. So at the beginning we have a CH, but it is not pronounced like a ch sound. It's pronounced like R-k. So it's more like a K sound in the beginning. And towards the end, if you look at the T-U-R-E, that is pronounced like a ch sound. So it's architect-ch at the end. And an example sentence could be, architecture is a really difficult subject to study at university. On to the next one, we have psychiatrist. Now, a psychiatrist is a type of job that you can do. And if we listen to the pronunciation of the beginning, we say psy for P-Y-S. Now, sometimes this is pronounced differently in different words, but in psychiatrist, it's psy. And again, if we look at that CH, it is not pronounced like a ch, it's psy-chi rather than psy-chai. On to the next one, we have laboratory. Now, I'm sure you guys know what a laboratory is. It's somewhere where scientists do their studies. So if you guys can hear, this word is kind of split off in the way that we pronounce it. So we say labo-ra-tree. So at the end, we do not pronounce the T-O-R-Y like Tory. It's laboratory. So almost like a tree that's outside in the garden. And an example for this one could be, scientists always need to do their studies in laboratories. On to the next word, we have subtle. Now, subtle is very similar to two words that we looked at in the first video. So again, with this one, we do not pronounce the B in the middle of this word. We just say subtle. So we completely miss that B in the middle. And an example for this one could be, the meal was subtle in flavour. Okay, on to the next one, we have recipe. Now, recipe is one of those words that is, again, used in a lot of different languages because there are two sounds that we make that are quite difficult for foreign learners. So we say re-s, so as you can hear, it's a s, not a k, P. So it's pronounced like we have the long I vowel at the end, not a short E vowel. And an example sentence for this one could be, my grandma gave me all of her recipes. On to the next one, we have adjective and preposition. Now, I'm sure you guys know what an adjective is, but if we listen to the pronunciation first, we pronounce it like adjective. So we don't really pronounce the D at the beginning of this word. And onto preposition, similarly to a word before, when you see that T-I-O-N, it's pronounced like shun. So it's preposition. And an easy example of an adjective could be fresh. And for preposition, we could have to. Onto the next one, we have dessert. Now, dessert is spelt almost exactly the same as a desert, like a desert in Saudi Arabia. However, it has two S's in it. So just be careful to recognise that when it has two S's in it, we are talking about a sweet dish that you normally have after dinner. So just listen to the pronunciation again. It's dessert. So let me give you an example sentence. I always love eating desserts after my main course. On to the next one, we have chaos. Now, again, like some words that we've already spoken about, this CH is not pronounced like a ch at all. It's again pronounced like a k. So it's K-os. So it sounds like we have a K-A-Y and then an O-S in this word. And chaos just means when things are crazy or in a mess. And let me give you an example sentence. It's always chaos when I take the kids to school. On to the next one, we have often. Now, often is pronounced differently in British English and American English. So in British English, we do pronounce that T. We do say often, but in American English, they say often. So just remember there's a difference between both of our pronunciations. And an example could be for this one, I often go to swimming classes. On to the next one, we have executive. Now, executive is quite difficult to pronounce because when you see an X in the middle, it's normally pronounced like egg. So instead of saying executive, we say egg-executive. So it sounds more like that. So if you look at the middle of the word, we have a C and a U together. And these two words are actually pronounced more like a Q sound. So it's egg-ze-Q-tive. And an example sentence could be, she has good executive skills. Okay, so on to the next one, we have coupon. Now, coupon, the beginning of this word is quite difficult to pronounce. So if you just listen again, it's coo, like a long U sound, pon. So we have a short O at the end, but a long U at the beginning. Coupon. And let me give you an example sentence. I always use my coupons when I go grocery shopping. On to the next one, we have quote. Now, even though quote has a U and an O at the beginning, we basically don't pronounce the U at all. We just say quote. So it's like a long O sound at the beginning. And let me give you an example of a famous quote. Love for all, hate for none. On to the next one, we have infamous. Now, infamous can be easily mispronounced because people will try to just pronounce it the same as famous, like a celebrity, a famous person. However, it's not pronounced the same. We say infamous. So it's a different vowel sound in that word. And an example could be, they caught the infamous criminal after 3 years. On to the next one, another type of job, we have plumber. Now, a plumber is someone who works on the pipes in a building or a house. And if you listen again to the pronunciation, we do not pronounce that B sound, just like in other words we've spoken about. So we pronounce it like plum, so we completely miss the B again. And an example sentence could be, you need to train for 3 years in order to become a plumber. Okay, and on to the next one, we have pronunciation, which is exactly what we're talking about today. So that's quite ironic. And pronunciation can be easily mispronounced because of the end of the word. So let's listen to it again. So it's pronunciation. And again, we have the T-I-O-N, which is pronounced like shun. So it's pronunciation. And an example could be, pronunciation is really important if you want to be understood by native speakers. So on to the next one, we have draw. Now this word is not the same as actually drawing a picture. This is different. This is something that you can put your clothes into, which is something that pulls out. And if you guys could already tell, we do not pronounce the R at the end of this word. So if you listen again, we say draw. So it's like a long or sound at the end. And let me give you an example. I always keep my jumpers in the drawers. Okay, so on to the last one for this video, we have entrepreneur. Now, entrepreneur is quite difficult to pronounce because we took this from the French word, but we did change the pronunciation a little bit. So if you listen again, we pronounce this like entrepreneur. So we have quite a long vowel sound at the end of that word. And if you don't know what an entrepreneur is, it's someone that makes their own money by maybe owning a business or something like that. So let me give you an example sentence. My cousin became an entrepreneur by the age of 21. We are now on to part 4 of the 100 of the most difficult words to pronounce in English. So let's get started with the first one. So the first word we have for this video is parochial. Now parochial is quite an advanced word, so if you don't know what this means, it has 2 meanings. And the first meaning is something to do with the church, the Christian church, and the other meaning is someone who is narrow-minded or is very closed-minded. Let's look at the pronunciation of this word. So if you listen again, we say parochial. So similarly to other words we've spoken about before, that CH is not pronounced like a ch sound, it's pronounced like a k sound. So it's parochial. So it's almost like a key sound actually at the end of the word. And an example sentence could be, older people tend to have parochial attitudes. On to the next one, we have chronological. And if you don't know what chronological means, it just means when things are in order. If you can see the first 2 letters, they are CH, but again, it's not pronounced like a ch sound, it's k. So it's chronological. And at the end, even though it's CAL, it's pronounced like a kl sound. And an example sentence could be, I like to have my work in chronological order. On to the next word, we have longitudinal. Now again, similarly to the first word, this is a very advanced word, so it's not very commonly used, but it can be easily mispronounced. So if you listen to the pronunciation again, it's long-i-tude-null. So when we have that TI, it's pronounced like a chewed sound in the middle. And also at the end, when we have the NAL, it's not nal, it's null. And in a sentence, you could use this like longitudinal muscles. So you can talk about muscles being longitudinal. On to the next one, we have island and Ireland. Now these 2 words can be pronounced differently depending on your accent and where you come from in the UK or the US, but if you just listen again to my pronunciation, there are 2 different sounds. So for the first one we say island, so we don't pronounce the S after the I, and the second one we say Ireland. So it's a different I sound at the beginning, it's R, like that. So an example sentence could be, the UK is an island and Ireland became independent in 1922. On to the next one, we have regularly. Now, even though this is a very common word, it can be mispronounced because the end of the word is pronounced in quite a strange way. If you read it as L-A-R-Y-L, you might want to say larily, but actually it's regularly. So it's almost like a double I sound at the end. So if you just listen one more time, it's regularly. regularly. And an example sentence could be, I regularly go to the cinema. On to the next one, we have lettuce. Now, lettuce, if you don't know, is a type of green vegetable that's very commonly used in salads, but it can be mispronounced because of the ending of the word. So if you listen again, we say lettuce. So actually, that C sound at the end is pronounced more like an S sound. And an example sentence could be, lettuce is really healthy for you. On to the next one, we have lieutenant. Now, lieutenant is quite a difficult word to pronounce because it is spelt very difficultly. So even the spelling confuses people, so of course the pronunciation will also. So if you listen again, it's lieutenant. So actually the beginning sound is just pronounced like a loo, like L-O-O, like the toilet, and then tenant. And an example sentence could be, my uncle served as a lieutenant in the British Army. Okay, so on to the next one, we have prejudice. Now, prejudice is quite difficult to pronounce because of the middle of the word. So if you listen again, it's pronounced like pre-de-gis. So the ending's quite easy because it's just I-C-E, but the middle is pronounced like j. So it's almost exactly the same as a G sound. And normally with J and G can be pronounced in the same way sometimes. And an example could be, there are always going to be people who are prejudiced against foreigners. On to the next one, we have sophisticated. Now, sophisticated is quite a nice word to use if you can. It can be difficult to pronounce because of that PH sound, and some people get confused with that type of spelling and they don't know how to pronounce it properly. But if you listen again, it's sophisticated. So actually, the PH is just pronounced exactly like an F sound. And an example sentence could be, the Queen is extremely sophisticated. On to the next one, we have debt. Now, similarly to other words we've looked at before, even though you have a B sound in the word, you do not pronounce it. So actually, you just pronounce it like debt. So you completely miss out that B towards the end. And an example sentence could be, you should always try to clear your debt as quickly as possible. On to the next one, we have miscellaneous. Now, miscellaneous could be difficult to pronounce because we have the S and the C towards the beginning of the word, but actually we do not pronounce that C at all. So if you listen again, it's miscellaneous. So actually, towards the beginning, the C just becomes like another S sound. And if you don't know what miscellaneous means, it's actually just a synonym for something that's different or like various items. And an example sentence could be, he picked up the miscellaneous paper from the tray. On to the next one, we have sour. Now, sour is a type of taste that you can get when you eat food. Normally something like lemons or something like that could be sour. And it's difficult to pronounce because of the O-U in the middle. Some people aren't clear about how this should be pronounced. So if you listen again, it's pronounced like sour. So you almost hear like a W sound in there, so sour. And an example sentence could be, lemons are really sour. On to the next one, we have hierarchical. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard the word of hierarchy before, but this is another form of that word, and this is quite difficult to pronounce because we have quite a few syllables in here. So if you listen again, we have hierarchical. And similarly to other words, that CH again is pronounced like a K sound, not a Ch sound. So there's two different K or C sounds. So if you listen again, higher, R, K, kull. So at the end it's a bit of a different sound actually. And an example sentence could be, animals tend to live in a hierarchical society. On to the next one, we have literature. Now, I'm sure you guys know what literature is. It's about different books and writing. And this can be difficult to pronounce because we have two different T sounds in the word. So if you listen again, it's lit, tr, ch. So actually at the beginning, even though we have an E followed by the R and the A, it actually sounds like we are saying R-E. So it's like li, tr. So if you can hear that there, that's kind of the difference in the beginning. And at the end of the word, even though it's T-U-R-E, it's actually pronounced like a ch sound. So it's li, tr, ch at the end. And an example sentence could be, some of the most famous literature comes from England. On to the next one, we have similarly. Now, similarly to regularly, this has a different ending that can really confuse students when they're trying to read this word. So if you listen again to the pronunciation, it's sim, li. So again, we have two of those different L sounds at the end of the word. And an example sentence could be, my best friend viewed a similarly priced property. On to the next one, we have athlete. Now, I'm sure you guys know what an athlete is. It's a professional sports person. And this word can be quite difficult to pronounce because some people can think that we pronounce it like athlete, because they could think that the E sound is a short sound, but actually it's a long vowel sound. So if you listen again, it's athlete. So it's almost like we have two E's towards the end. And an example sentence could be, David Beckham is a famous athlete from England. On to the next one, we have thoroughly. Now, any word that is similar to this that we've spoken about in other videos, like through, thought, and things like that, are very difficult to pronounce for students because they are so similar and they always seem to be pronounced differently. So if you listen to this one again, it's thoroughly. And actually at the end, we don't pronounce that H after the G, it's just thoroughly. And an example sentence could be, you always need to thoroughly check your work before you hand it in. On to the next word, we have archive. Now archive, again, similarly to the other words we've looked at, has a CH in the middle, but we do not pronounce that CH. So if you listen again, it's archive. And an example sentence could be, museums keep the best archives. On to the next one, we have Massachusetts. Now, if you don't know, Massachusetts is a state in the United States of America, and it is a very, very long word, so it's very, very difficult to pronounce this one. So if you listen again, it's pronounced like ma-sa-chu-sis. So what's different about this pronunciation is that actually the CH is not a K sound, it's a chew sound. So if you listen again, it's chew-sis at the end. And an example sentence could be, Massachusetts is a southern state in America. On to the last one for this video, we have absolutely. Now, if you listen to the pronunciation again of this word, we say ab-sa-lut-ly. So actually the O at the beginning of the word is not pronounced like an O, it's actually pronounced like an A sound. And right at the end of the word, we also have a T-E-L-Y, but we don't pronounce that E sound. We just say loot-ly. And an example sentence could be, I absolutely love eating pancakes. Today we are moving on to part 5 of the 100 of the most difficult words to pronounce in English. So let's get started with the first one. So the first word we have is begrime. Now, begrime, quite an advanced word, so of course it's difficult to pronounce, is difficult to pronounce because of the beginning of the word. So sometimes when you see B, you might think it's pronounced like B-grime, but actually it's pronounced like B-grime. And begrime means when something is so blackened with dirt. So let me give you an example sentence. In the 1900s, London was begrime with lots of soot and dirt. On to the next one, we have height and weight. Now, of course, these words are spelt in a very similar way, but they do have differences when we pronounce them. So if you listen to the first one again, it's height. And the second one, weight. So we have two different vowel sounds at the beginning of the words. So if you listen again to that beginning, it's high, and then the other one, way. So that's the difference between these two words. Let me give you some example sentences. We could say, my brother is at the height of 1.80 meters. And for weight, we could say, my sister has always been underweight. On to the next one, we have cough. Now, I'm sure you guys know what cough is. It's just when you have a sore throat and you start coughing like that. And cough is difficult to pronounce because of the vowels in the beginning, the O and the U, because in English, as you guys know, we pronounce things differently all the time. So if you just listen again to the pronunciation, it's cough. So actually at the end, it's like we have two F sounds. And let me give you an example sentence. We could say, I had a bad cough last week when I was ill. On to the next one, we have daughter and doctor. Now these are very similar in pronunciation, so I guess students could get easily confused with these two. But just listen again to the first one, it's daughter. And the second one, doctor. So we have a different vowel sound at the beginning. So just listen again, door, doc. So those are the differences between those two. Let me give you an example sentence. We could say, my best friend's daughter is turning 4 years old next week. And for doctor, we could say, I always visit my local doctor when I feel ill. And on to the next one, we have bear, bird, beard, and beer. So again, these words, I think we've done something very, very similar in a previous video. These words are all pronounced very similarly and they are spelt in very similar ways. So it's very easy to get confused with these words. If we go back to the first one we pronounce like bear. So the bear is the big black or brown animal that lives in the forest and loves honey. And listen to the second one, it's bird. And I'm sure you guys know what a bird is, like an eagle, a sparrow, or something like that. And the second one, beard. So this is something that men have around here. So as you can tell, it's similar to bear, but we have a D on the end, so it's pronounced beard instead. And the last one is pronounced like beer. Now beer is the alcoholic drink that you can have. So I guess bear, the animal, and beer, the drink, are the most easily confused ones out of these four. Let me give you some example sentences. For the first one, we could say there are many native black bears in North America. For the second one, the ostrich is the biggest bird in the world. For the third one, many men like to grow a beard. And for the fourth one, many countries make different flavoured beers. On to the next word, we have vocabulary. Now, vocabulary is similar to words that we have looked at in the past. With the ending, it's quite difficult to pronounce. So if you listen to the pronunciation again, it's vocabulary. But actually, if you heard at the end, it's not really pronounced like an A when we say it in a sentence. We just pronounce it like vocabulary. So it's a lurry at the end, not a larry. And let me give you an example sentence. Vocabulary is extremely important in any language learning process. On to the next one, we have colleague. Now, if you guys don't know what a colleague is, it's just someone that you work with. And this one is difficult to pronounce because of the spelling. We've got quite a few different vowels in this word. So if you just listen again, it's co-league. So actually we just have a long vowel sound at the end. And let me give you an example. You could say, I get on really well with my colleagues at work. On to the next one, we have law and low. Now, of course, these words could be easily confused because it's just one different vowel in the middle. But if you listen to the first one, it's pronounced like law. The second one, low. So the first one is an A vowel, second one, O vowel. And an example sentence could be, it's extremely important to follow the law. And for the second one, that table is extremely low. On to the next one, we have negotiation. Now, we have talked about words in previous videos that end with this T-I-O-N. So again, this is a very, very similar situation. So we don't pronounce it like tion, we pronounce it like shun at the end. So just listen again to the pronunciation. It's negotiation. So actually, as you can hear, both of those T sounds are pronounced like sh sounds. And an example sentence could be, Alan Sugar gave a great negotiation for his business. On to the next one, we have development. Now, development could be easily mispronounced because of the L-O-P. Some students might try to pronounce it like lop instead of lup. So if you listen again, it's de-ve-lup-ment. And if you heard at the end, it's not meant, it's meant. And an example sentence could be, there is a large development of new housing in London. On to the next one, we have raw and row. Now, if you don't know what raw is normally used for, we use this more with meat. So when meat is uncooked completely, it's raw. And row is a type of sport that you can do along the river. So if you listen again to the pronunciation of these words, the first one is raw, the second one is row. So again, similarly to what we've spoken about before, it's just the different vowel sound in these words that are different. Let me give you an example sentence. You should never feed your animals raw chicken. And for the next one, we could say Cambridge is famous for its row team. On to the next one, we have culture. Now, culture might be difficult to pronounce because of that U at the beginning of the word. But if you listen again, it's pronounced like culture. So, and also if you heard at the end, the T-U-R-E is pronounced like a ch sound. And let me give you an example sentence. Culture is really important for everyone's heritage. On to the next one, we have Greenwich. Now, Greenwich is actually a place in London, and this could be easily mispronounced because of the W at the end of the word. So some people might think it's pronounced like Greenwich, but actually we don't pronounce the W. So if you listen again, it's pronounced like Greenwich. And also it must be confusing because at the beginning of the word, it's spelt like green, but no, we just pronounce one of those E's, so it becomes Gren. And an example sentence could be, Greenwich has a famous university in London. On to the next one, we have mountain. Now, mountain, similarly to other words we've spoken about, could be difficult to pronounce because of the vowels at the beginning, because we have two vowels, O and U, but it's pronounced like mau at the beginning. And at the end, it's pronounced like ten. So it's almost like we have an E at the end and not an A and an I vowel. So just listen one more time to the pronunciation. It's mountain. And an example sentence could be, there are many famous mountains all over the world. On to the next one, we have realm. Now, realm would be difficult to pronounce because at the beginning it's spelled exactly the same as real, but actually we just pronounce it like it has an E in there and not an A. So if you listen again, it's realm. And if you don't know what realm means, it's just another word for a kingdom, a monarchy, or a state. And an example sentence could be, Queen Elizabeth II is the Queen to the Commonwealth realm. On to the next one, we have crocodile. Now, if you don't know what a crocodile is, it's a big sized animal or mammal that lives normally in the rivers. So you find a lot of crocodiles in Africa. And if you listen to the pronunciation, we pronounce it like croc or dial. So we have two different O sounds in the word, and at the end it's pronounced a little bit differently because it sounds like we are saying dial. And an example sentence could be, there are many crocodiles in Africa. On to the next one, we have variety. Now, if you don't know what variety means, it just means that you have a number of different things available. And if you listen to the pronunciation again, it's pronounced like variety. So actually in this word we have two schwa sounds, which are sounds. So even at the beginning, even though we have an A, it's pronounced like the. And an example sentence could be, it's the variety that makes my job so enjoyable. On to the next one, we have scissors. Now, scissors can be easily mispronounced because of the beginning of the word. So we have two consonant letters, an S and a C, but if you listen again, we don't really pronounce the C. So it's scissors. So it's almost just like we are saying the Z, instead of an S sound throughout this word. And an example could be, scissors are needed to cut paper. On to the next one, we have niche. Now, I'm pretty sure that niche is a word that was taken from French, like some other words that we have in English, so that's what makes it a little bit more difficult to pronounce. So if you listen again, it's pronounced like niche. So it's almost just like we have an E vowel in the middle. And at the end, even though it's a CH, it's pronounced like sh. And if you don't know what niche means, it could mean a comfortable or suitable place in someone's life or employment. So let me give you an example sentence. He is now the head chef of his own restaurant. He feels as if he has found his niche. On to the last one for this video and series, we have congratulations. Now, congratulations is quite a basic word in English, but it is still really difficult to pronounce for most foreign learners. So if you listen again, we pronounce it like con-gra-chu-lations. So again, just like other words we've spoken about, at the end it's not tions, it's shuns. And an example could be, you should always say congratulations when someone gets married. Okay guys, so that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching this series. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and please don't forget to leave us a comment down below. Thanks for watching. Bye.